This is crazy for us because it's our first YouTube. This is our very important interview with the Chief of Police, and we're very excited. I'm Sami.
I'm Erica.
And
I'm Bob.
Yay! Perfect. So, just who are you?
Well, who am I? Bob Ticer, and that is one name that hasn't changed in my lifetime. Unless you're my mom, she still calls me Bob.
Oh.
I've always had that name, but who am I? That's who I am. What I do is law enforcement, and that's where the difference is of titles. I've had a lot of different titles, but my name's always the same, so I'm still the same person. If you want to know a little bit about me, I grew up in Arizona, rural Arizona, Prescott, Arizona. If anybody's been up there, it's actually the mile-high city of Arizona. It's not like Denver. It's a lot of people. Prescott had maybe 20,000 people when I was a kid. I think around 40,000 people now in central Arizona. I grew up in that rural community, doing what most kids did back then, hunting, fishing, and hiking, and cruising around, playing sports. That was kind of my upbringing, and I always wanted to be a police officer because that's what Dad did when I was born. He was a Phoenix police officer, and then later went to the highway patrol. So we moved out of the Phoenix area, not Prescott when I was a kid, but I always saw my dad in uniform every day, so there was really no other thought in my mind other than that's what I wanted to do. And I was very anxious to be a police officer, so of course you have to be 21 years old, and I couldn't be patient enough to wait for 21, so I went in the military right out of high school. I wasn't a big fan of school then. I am now, so those watching, get your education. Super important, but then I was that kid that it wasn't that interesting going to college.
Yeah.
So I enlisted in the Air Force and went to the security police, and then spent 4 years in law enforcement. So I've been wearing a badge and carrying a gun since I was 18 years old, and that's since 1985. So that's a while. Geez, 35 years to look back on it, which is gone by pretty fast.
Yeah.
So spent some time in Florida. I was in South Korea for a year, and also in California while in the military. And then as I was transitioning after my 4-year enlistment, I was working in law enforcement. So I applied to a few places in my hometown, Prescott, Arizona, hired to be a police officer. And I went to the police academy in Arizona and began my career in law enforcement, serving the name that I grew up in Prescott. But I always wanted to go to highway patrol. So shortly after, well, a little over a year, I put in the city department there, and then I had opportunity when I was hired by the Arizona Department of Public Safety, and I went to the Highway Patrol Academy, and then started my career in the Highway Patrol. And I spent a little over 20 years in Arizona law enforcement there. And I met my wife in a little town called Cordes Junction. Probably nobody's heard of that because it's a wide spot in the road in Arizona, right at the junction of I-17 and Highway 69. That was where I was stationed at. So my wife was working for Game and Fish Department, and she actually rode a horse by my house. That's not better. Right? So we believe we might have been the only 2 eligible people out there. So it just happened to work out, and that was 28 years ago. So got married, and we've got 2 great kids. 2 boys, Wade and Jake. One boy, Wade, is serving in the United States Navy right now. And our other son, Jake, is getting ready to go play college baseball. So very proud of them. But spent the career in Arizona and had opportunity to work a variety of assignments and go through a variety of ranks. I spent primarily most of my career in the Highway Patrol. Spent some time in auto theft, a little bit in narcotics, worked in gang enforcement, media relations. So definitely appreciative of what you're doing here. I think it's such an important thing that you're doing is communicate to the public. For a cop, it wasn't my most favorite assignment, but it was an assignment. I did that for a while. Then also worked at the state legislature. So that was my career in Arizona, and I wanted to be by the way, I went back and got my college education. So I ended up getting a master's degree.
Nice.
I can believe that, in education of all things.
Wow.
When I was that kid, that got probably B's and C's in high school. I just wanted to play basketball, do all that stuff. And then as I was going through my career, I decided I wanted to be a police chief someday. And growing up in Arizona, my parents would take me to Durango every summer, and with my brothers and a sister, they were a little bit older than me, and we would go up and fish in Durango every summer. And so that's when I found Colorado. Of course, I didn't know anything about Colorado in the winter. I just knew all about this great place to go fishing.
Sneaky like that.
And all that, I know. And so I was like, I want to live in Colorado someday. And so I began preparing to be a police chief through education and studies and experiences at work, and was really looking at a couple different places to be a chief at. One would be in a beach community, and the other would be in the mountains. And I was fortunate enough to be hired as a police chief in Avon, Colorado. I started up there in 2010 and worked 6 years up in that community, and that was a real transition going from an agency with 2,000 people to an agency with 22. And when I got there, I'd ask questions like, well, who handles that? And, well, you do, chief. I'm like, okay, well, who handles the media relay? Who's the PIO? Well, that's your job. What about records? Who does that? Well, you do that. And so I realized, oh wow, this is a lot different than a big agency, but I'm fortunate, very fortunate I had that experience because it brought me back into understanding what I believe to be line level functions in police work and how to go about doing that. And I always wanted to be a police officer. I only wanted to be a chief for a period of time. I was always a police officer. Still, that's my favorite part of this profession is being a police officer. So after 6 years there in the mountains, and by the way, I found out what Colorado cold was that I didn't know about when I signed on. So I've adjusted to that and learned how to ski up there and really enjoyed all that as well. But had great opportunities up there and worked with the fire chief up there in Vail. Our dispatch center in Eagle County was Vail Police Department was the host agency that handled that. So as a police department in Avon, all I had to do was write a check every year to Vail for their dispatch services. So now I come here, others are writing checks to us, and we're running the dispatch center for all these agencies that we support. So there was a little bit of a change there for me, but it's great to have a dispatch center here. I love being part of that. Having great dispatchers here in our building as employees. So the fire chief up there, Vail, fire chief at the time was Chief Miller, Mark Miller, and now he's the fire chief here at Loveland, who you dispatch for, for the Fire Rescue Authority. Well, we're friends, and when I knew the chief here in Avon was getting ready to, Loveland was getting ready to retire in October-ish, November of 2015, the first person I called was Chief Miller because he was now here. I said, hey, tell me a little bit about this, what do you think? And so he told me about it and said, you should apply. And so I really put my mind to applying for this job and put effort into it, and was very fortunate to be hired here a little over 4 years ago. And we transitioned down here. It's worked out really well for our family. Got me back into an organization that's a little bit bigger than Avon, but certainly not as big as Arizona DPS. And I just really enjoy serving this community and what we do here in law enforcement. So I always thought I would do a 20-year career in law enforcement. Now I'm coming up on 31 years in civilian law enforcement. That's not counting the Florida military. And I'm not sure there's anything else I really want to do because this is what I like to do. I guess I could go do something else, but serving the community and interacting with the people that we work with every day, who are the finest, the most integrity-based people that anyone can ask for. To be able to work in a police department, especially this one, or the departments I worked in before, just to get in the door. You've been through the backgrounds and go through with a fine-tooth comb, right? I can walk in this door here at the department and know that everybody in here has strong character, great integrity, they're honest, they're really good people, great people. So I just enjoyed that. So that's a little bit about my upbringing and how I came into law enforcement.
What's been your favorite part? Like, what was your favorite stage of what you've done so far?
My whole career?
Your whole career.
A lot of favorites.
Okay.
Just like I say, you're my favorite dispatcher. If you walked out the door and I'd be really
right.
I have a lot of favorites and a lot of great experiences in law enforcement. If I was to pick really what was my most favorite, and it was being a Arizona Highway Patrolman and just getting in my car in my driveway, checking on the radio, which our dispatchers were 100 miles away from where I worked at. So I often didn't even know what they looked like. Occasionally, you run across one every few years or so, you're like, oh, I recognize your voice. I'm Bob, I'm Sandy. And anyway, I digress there. That was getting on the radio, checking on, driving on the highway and going out and working on rural roads, doing highway patrol. And that was by far my most favorite time in law enforcement. That was about 10 years that I did that before I started promoting and going into other assignments. So that was, where I learned how to really interact with people, because if you're out in the middle of nowhere and, you don't have backup, I mean, you don't have a backup. Most of the time, you might have one partner working, and that officer could be 50, 60 miles away. If he's tied up, you don't have anybody, there would be one deputy sheriff maybe, he might be tied up. Or at night, you're the only one on, and your backup's gonna be dispatch calling somebody from your squad out of bed, put on the uniform, come out, back you up. So what I learned there is, how to communicate with people. Otherwise, you would be in trouble. And, you know, we learn all these defensive tactic skills in law enforcement, and I was pretty confident at that, but I prefer to talk with people rather than wrestle around with them if I could, or you get hurt in uniforms. Nothing really good comes out of that. So there was a challenge every day on how to interact with the public out on highways. And that was, for me, a lot of fun. I really enjoyed meeting people. I met people from all over the world on the highways, because a lot of times folks are going to the Grand Canyon, so met a lot of people from other countries and had great conversations out there. Took a lot of pictures, even after writing a ticket. Hey, we're from Germany, can we get a picture of you? Sure, as soon as I write the ticket, then we'll get a picture. Okay, we do some of that. But then you really had to be able to do all functions of law enforcement, because you were typically the only one. So, for example, if you had a fatal car crash, you would be the crash investigator, you'd be the photographer, you would handle the scene, you would handle the medical examiner. Oftentimes, if it was a local person, you'd be doing the next of kin notification when you were done at the scene. If it was a DUI investigation, you'd be going to grand juries, dealing with homicide investigations and all that. That would all be you. And that's the big difference I've seen in city law enforcement. In larger departments, it's compartmentalized. Everybody has their own special skills. So here in Loveland, if that happened, you'd have probably 20 different people working. And that's great. That's a better way to serve them. But if you're a rural highway patrol officer, but I enjoyed that. That was always my favorite part of the job. You know, and being part of life saving was always powerful. I remember a couple times I'd be out in the middle of nowhere with somebody seriously injured. I'm a police officer. I have basic medical skills. I'm certified as an EMT before, so I could do some of that. But still, when you're dealing with somebody that's really serious trauma, and you're out there just trying to comfort them, and then you would hear that helicopter coming, from DPS helicopter coming out of Flagstaff or Kidman. You're like, all right, hang on. I hear the helicopter. They're going to be here. And that would be good for them to hear that, but also I'd be thinking, I sure hope they get here real fast so they can handle this, because it's so stressful.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed being able to help people that were hurt, that work with families out there. Because you come across a lot of that as a highway officer, and sometimes that'd be people from places that from a long ways away really be out of their sorts, or they roll a car over and go over. So that would be my most favorite time, is those 10 years out there. But then again, working narcotics or working gang enforcement, or all the other opportunities were good too. One, I wouldn't say it was my most favorite, but was one of my most beneficial experiences, was when I was the department's legislative liaison in Arizona. That was the time when the director, the big guy, we call it Ivory Tower. Right? Everybody's got a name for the headquarters, right?
Right.
There's names here too, I'm sure. But Ivory Tower is the third story, and the boss had a big giant office, way bigger than this room here. And he was in charge of 2,000 people, city police colonel. And he called me and asked me to come to his office when I was a lieutenant at the time. There was a lot of links between him and I. I'm thinking, why is he calling me? So I take this long walk over there, and he's 6'7", 270 pounds, big giant man, Roger Vanderpool. He asked me if I would go down to the state legislature and be the department's legislative liaison. Now, I was working auto theft at the time, which was a dream job for a cop, right? I had street crimes, and we were responsible for the entire state of doing vehicle theft enforcement, multi-agency throughout the state. I was the commander of that, so I was in this job that I probably still would be in today if he didn't make that call. And so he asked me if I would go down there and do that, and I said, oh, sure, boss, I'd be glad to do that, right? And I walked out, and I'm like, oh, that legislature. But he kept his promise to me. He said, I'll tell you what, you go down there and do 2 years as the department's legislative liaison, and when you're done with that, if you would like to transfer in 2 years, you can have any command on the department you want. And 2 years later, he gave me that choice. He gave me, I could have Phoenix Metro Highway Patrol as a command, or the State Gang Task Force. And so, 2 years later, he called me, so I ended up going into gangs in the State Gang Task Force. But going back to that assignment at the state legislature, it was a difficult job because you had to wear a suit and go down and interact with the politicians, all the state senators and state representatives, and be involved in all of legislation related to public safety in the state, and be a conduit between the governor and the Arizona DPS director, and interact with a lot of people. And then I had a couple sergeants down there who were responsible for the House and the Senate and protection of those leaders as well too. So that part of the law enforcement department was being handled by those folks. That was pretty cool. But interesting enough, when I first went down there, Janet Napolitano was the governor, and she promoted me to commander too a couple years later, which was pretty cool. And as you know, she was a Democrat, and then she went to Washington D.C. to be President Obama's Secretary of Homeland Security. Mm-hmm. Now I believe she's running the university system in California. So she's the real deal. Yeah. And she's a Democrat. We'll talk about that. So I'm down there working for a year, and she's a Democrat governor, and the House and Senate are controlled by Republicans. So I'm trying to figure all this politics out. How do I work involved in that? And I get a call, go testify in this committee and oppose this bill or support that bill. So I was doing that. And then the president calls her to Washington. So now there's a new governor in the next session. The next year I'm down there, and that's Jan Brewer. And Jan Brewer is this very strong Republican. So we had a Democrat governor, a Republican governor, and I'm still in the middle doing the same job. So now I'm down at the state capitol with a Republican governor, Republican-controlled House and Senate, and I would, for a while, I was wondering, am I going to have to testify on that bill that's coming back around from previous year, and now it's here again? No, I don't. Why? Different governors. Mm-hmm. So what I learned for those 2 years is watching how Democrats and Republicans work and how government works. How we're stable, we're still doing the same job, but you have different elected officials. Mm-hmm. And for that, I look back on that all the time, and as a police chief, I use those experiences every day in how I interact with politicians and elected officials. And I think without having had that experience, I wouldn't go be as successful working with our elected officials as I have been in my last 10 years or so. So I'm thankful for that opportunity. And, you know, I tell people all the time, my job is to serve everyone, not just Republicans, or not just Democrats, or independents, or people in this socioeconomic status, or how people look here and how they look there. You know, our job is to serve everybody, and so that experience in Arizona really helped mold me to go do the job that I did. That was a long answer to what.
That's okay.
You said you had a lot of favorites.
Yeah,
I think that's good.
Next podcast we can bring more favorites.
Yeah, round two.
Least favorites.
Least favorites.
Yeah.
Sorry, it was media relations. Yeah, frankly, it was media relations, and I was a sergeant at the time in Arizona, and we had two very seasoned public information officers that were both Arizona Highway Patrol officers, and then I was asked to go in there as a sergeant and supervise the unit and still handle media relations. And this was 2004, 2003, somewhere around there. So we were in this world of pagers still, and the way, and we were headquartered out of Phoenix, and we were responsible for the entire state, state police out there. So we were very, very busy with calls from the media. If there was a major incident happened in Kingman or Tucson, we were having to deal with that. And then Phoenix media was certainly calling it all the time because there was wrecks on the freeway and things going on. So very busy. We carried pagers, and we'd get paged, and all of a sudden our pagers would just be going crazy with numbers, and then we'd have to go to our phone system and call in, and then tell the media, all right, we'll be out at this location here, and then you can all come there, and we'll give you a briefing. And it was a 24/7 operation, really. I mean, there was no rest. I did that for, gosh, I don't know how long I was in there, more than a year, and that was about the most burned out I was ever at in my career, because it was all the time. The pagers, I mean, because people are crashing in the freeway system at 12 at night, or 8 in the morning. They didn't just do it from 8 to 5.
Yeah.
You know, at all. And so that was difficult, a difficult job because you just didn't get any downtime. And so from there, I promoted to lieutenant and went to a couple assignments. And then I was in a great assignment and boss called. I got called to his office twice.
Oh,
First
no.
time was when I was, after I got promoted to lieutenant, was in this good job, and he calls me over and says, hey, we're creating a new position over in our media relations, and we need a lieutenant over there, and what do you think? Do you think you'd be interested in that job? And I'm like, sure, boss, that'd be great, I'd love to do that. So I walked out of there, and then I had responsibility for the sergeant and those officers, and then some publications on the Department of Media Relations and some other public affairs. So it was a little bit more of a responsibility than it was that first time, but I still had a responsibility for the media. So I was back in there again, so I did 2 stints, one as a sergeant, one as a lieutenant, and then finally worked my way out and ended up in Loveland, Colorado, down the road. But those were really important jobs, and I'm glad that I did it because it helped me interact with the media better and appreciate how important that is. But it wasn't always with it. It was because I was trained to be a police officer, not a media relations person. But now you'll see in law enforcement, a lot of agencies are moving into bringing in professionally trained professional staff to handle media relations rather than taking a police officer and trying to turn them into a PIO. That's difficult because by nature, most cops don't want to talk to media. We're just not used to it. We're used to doing police work. So to get put on a camera and have to speak to the media, the way you have to put messages out is it's just not the way we've been trained. So that was difficult. But frankly, I don't watch a whole lot of news anymore after those years because I got enough of it.
Yeah.
I was like, wow.
Yeah.
But I'm glad I had the opportunity, but that wasn't my most favorite time.
I'm glad we don't have to talk to the media.
Yeah.
Like, oh, we'll have somebody call you.
Exactly, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They'll call you back.
Yeah.
I try and do that now as a chief. I'm like, I'll just send that to so-and-so. I know they're thinking, yeah, chief, I'd be glad to do that.
Okay, boss.
Yep.
No problem. So I get it, I understand that, and I try and lead and work in this police department that's like that because I understand what it's like to be in a variety of different ranks of positions. And I think that I take pride that I try and remember that and forget what that's like.
Yeah.
So I've had the opportunity to do a lot of different things.
What do you like about dispatch?
Dispatch.
Yeah.
Love dispatch.
Perfect answer.
I love dispatch. As a matter of fact, on Facebook the other day, when I was on Prescott PD, that was 1989, so it's a long time ago. There was a post on Facebook from a particular dispatcher, my favorite dispatcher, Diane. I got a lot of dispatcher friends and my favorites, but anyway, she's now retired, and she had a picture on Facebook with 4 or 5 other dispatchers who all dispatched back in that same era that I worked when I was at Prescott. And I still have that connection with them. We can still, oh wow, y'all look great, it's nice to see you, and it's really cool. So I'll tell you one experience on why I love our dispatchers, and then I'll talk about law for a minute.
Okay.
But one time I was in the district office up in Prescott when I was a highway patrol up there, and that was where our headquarters were for a very vast region of Arizona. And one night I was in the office in the evening writing a report, doing something. I finished an EY report or something like that, and the phone rang and answered it. I knew it was from Flagstaff Dispatch, and that was about 100 miles away, like I said before. And it was Sandy Thompson, one of the dispatchers up there, one of my most favorite dispatchers. So, yeah, what's up? And she said, I think she called me Bobby too, because she was a little senior to me. And she says, what are you doing? And I said, I'm writing a report. What's going on? She's like, well, this isn't normal for you. At this time of day, you're usually in this area of the district, and so I'm just calling to check on you. And I'm like, really? She's like, yeah, just to make sure everything's okay, because you're not really in your normal pattern today. Just checking on you. And I'll never forget that phone call. And I usually wrote my reports at a different time, or at least wasn't in the office at that time, and it was unusual for her, and she had heard me, but how would I have known that I had dispatchers 100 miles away that knew my routines? And then I started really thinking, they know my voice voice sounds, if I'm nervous, or if I'm scared, or, something bad's happened, I need a backup, or it's just, everything's good. And so I started realizing at that point in my career how important it was for that lifeline of a dispatcher to take care of me so I could survive and get home safely and do my job. And I really, that really was a profound phone call that day. So, dispatchers are vital to the community. We talk so much, we should have a podcast on YouTube just on the work that you do, because it's, most people don't know what you do, right? Somebody calls and you answer the phone, and they expect it, and you never let them down, because you answer that 911 call in less than 10 seconds every time, sometimes within a second or two. And then you quickly figure out who to send and how to send them, and you do that. But then equally, once that's done, you hang up the phone and you're on with another person. And so one thing I've realized a lot with you all is you don't often get those closures like the police officer does. And like I was telling you, as a highway patrol officer, I often got the closure that same night just by making a death notification, which that was not a fun part of the job either. And in Arizona, it was the responsibility of the local law enforcement agency, not a coroner, to make those notifications. So we had to do it. There was no coroner notifications. It would generally be the patrol officer and the patrol sergeant would do it together. And that was always a challenge for me as a young guy, having to do that. I mean, who trains you how to do that? And frankly, if a city police car pulls up in front of the house, people are like, oh, cops are here. But if a state trooper pulls up in front of the house in the middle of the night, everybody's like, that's not good news. That's always bad news. And so you can see it coming as soon as you pull your car up. As soon as a person saw you at the door, they knew. And so that was a difficult time. But back to the dispatch. We get closure as police officers. Dispatchers don't. So for you to be able to take that on the way you do and to be able to carry that and do it so humbly and professionally, it's amazing to me. So one thing I've committed to you on, and I've also challenged you if you don't like to talk to you about this at one time years ago, when we were coming on, not that long ago, that if you don't see me or you don't see us coming up and doing that closure with you, you gotta remind us of it. Because we're not intentionally forgetting about dispatch, we just get doing something else that is part of our duty. But just to think that you're able to do what you do and then move on to the next call and not have closure and be able to still do it in a professional way just says so much about who you are. And I've told a lot of people that most police officers don't work for dispatchers. Most dispatchers don't work for police officers. But we can't do this job without each other, and it's so critical. And then what I've learned and appreciate more, especially now that I have my own dispatch center, I didn't have that in Avon. Dale did, and in Arizona, UPS was 100 miles away. So here it feels like this is my dispatch. You know what I mean? And to see how connected we are, and how appreciated we are, how we work together, it's amazing. But my point to it, I can walk in and see what you're doing. Most times you can't talk to me because you're so busy. You have, is it 8 screens? 8 screens in front of you, 8 screens, and not like laptop screens. They're gigantic screens, and I get intimidated by that. I'm like, I look around, I'm like, okay, I just want to say hi, and I leave, because there's too much for me. There's too much sensation going on. So I really don't know how you do it, and I know your training is extensive, and it's difficult to get through, and oftentimes people can't get through it. It's so difficult, so much multitasking. So my respect goes out to you and your colleagues around the nation, that way up here. You save so many lives. And most of the time you don't have to do it. So you save our lives too. I appreciate that. Like Sandy and Colin.
Right.
That's cool.
So that's cool. Yeah. That's a good dispatcher. It's really good. She's paying attention.
Yeah. She was good. And I haven't seen her in person in probably 25, 26 years, but I know she's out there, so I hope I run across her someday. I think I told her that story once or twice before. Maybe she doesn't even remember.
She's probably like, oh, that was just another video.
She's doing her thing.
Yeah, she's another one.
And she just checked, okay, and then she's doing something else. But to me, I remember it vividly. She probably forgot. It's just her job. Not really just her job, but
Yeah.
well, she is. And I know you do that for us too, so it's really cool.
So turn on the tables here. What is your least favorite thing of dispatch?
Dispatch, least favorite dispatch.
there's something that we can improve on.
I'm trying to just say this because you're here, but I really don't know. I mean, you are a nationally accredited, this Loveland Police Department Dispatch Center is nationally accredited. You know, I pay attention to all the audits, all the outside influences looking in to see how we're doing business. And I don't want to say you're perfect, because once in a while you misspeak a word,
Yeah.
or you switch a sentence around. That's generally the only criticism I ever hear, which is amazing. That's crazy if that's all these bodies that look in can come up with and say, you should have said this word here, or you should have put that sentence first. Wow. I look at those and I'm like, that's it? That's the only negative comment about our dispatch center? I can't believe how awesome you are at that. So, negatives out of dispatch, I don't have any. You know, I mean, people that know me, if there was something, I would tell you, but maybe I'll think about it later today, but I can't think of anything. And probably part of that is understanding that you're all people. If you had asked me 20, 25 years ago, I might have said, well, quit being so grumpy, or maybe be a little more patient in that area, or this or that. But now that I understand and been around a while, I realize that we're all people and we're all different, and we're all definitely unique and different in there. And I commend you to be able to work so close together, because we spend a lot of time together in a closed place, which can be difficult, no doubt. But nowadays, I understand if the dispatcher's short, or maybe even really bad times. Is that just a one-time deal, bad day, or you just had a really cruddy call and you're upset about it, or somebody said something to you that didn't make you feel good, and you felt like you wanted to say something that you wish you could take back? I understand that, and I'm sure dispatchers do that once in a while. I'm sure police officers do it on the other end of the radio as well too. But as long as we can just understand that we're people and we sometimes act like that, we work through that and move on, we're good. And I see that here in this organization when there's a little tension or a little stress here and there, and just work through it. But I don't see the grudges. So I understand that you're all people. Sometimes you might even be having something at home, family, and now you gotta come in for 10 hours and put that aside and do your work. And Roger Vanderpool, the director I was telling you about, he taught me something a long time ago. He's been one of my mentors in my lifetime. I watched him and worked directly for him for a long time. He and I were walking into headquarters one day. We parked our cars out there, we were going into work. He was coming in about the same time as me, and we were walking in together. And I was a lieutenant at the time, and he was telling me about something going on in his life that was causing some stress for him. I can't remember what it was, a family thing or something was bumming him out. And he was talking to me about it, and then we got close to the big doors at headquarters, huge glass sliding doors, and he stopped for a second. He goes, okay, all that's over. He goes, now I gotta be the director. As I walked in, he just told me that, and then he walked in, the doors opened, he walked in. Probably 20 different people before he got to his office were like, hey, director, how you doing? Hey, Roger, how's it going? And he's like, I mean, the guy could move the room, and he was just shaking hands and talking to people and all that. And I was watching all this as we were going up, because people weren't talking to me, they were talking to him because he's the colonel. Yeah, I was watching it all the way up, and I was just like, wow, here's a guy that was having a really cruddy day, is having a cruddy day, but he didn't let that carry on into the department. I thought, that is how you're supposed to do your job. So I know you all do that too. I try and do that, but once in a while we're like, tough day. And I think we have enough support with each other that we can understand that. So.
I say that if I get short with someone, it's because I like you and I'm comfortable like showing my emotions to someone. And now we have a brother, but we're all sisters up there. And if I can't, sorry, I never snapped at you, Sammy, but if I can't snap at Sammy and be like I don't have time to be nice and say, yes, please, yes, look at line 17. It's like, this is me unfiltered coming out. So I hope we can all understand that.
Right.
Yeah, and I think some of us do, But again, going back to when I was new, those first few years and had less experience dealing with people, maybe I wouldn't have understood that as much as I do now. So that's a good feedback for you to balance if you get that 2-year veteran out there that, well, why is this bitch grumpy today? Why did they snap at me?
Yeah.
You know, that might be a time for that face-to-face call.
Definitely.
Say, hey,
It's
I
like,
didn't snap at you. Having a bad day, or you I was mad at you.
Yeah. I'm mad now, yes.
Yeah.
We go.
Yeah.
What do you want the community to know about Loveland?
Loveland, it's about our department, our dispatch.
Yes, and will you include our slogan?
Yes.
Yes.
Our mission statement.
Yes,
Yeah.
our slogan. Yeah, it's
Your jingle?
yeah, our jingle.
Yeah.
And to be
It's
honest,
only 5 words.
if you can sing it as a jingle.
Yeah, I can't sing. I have some skills, but singing is not. I wish I could, but I don't. So our mission statement here on the department is save lives, fight crime, survive. Right? And where I take a lot of pride right now is when our community hears us talking about our mission statement, and then they recite it back and they know it. So I challenge folks in our community all the time when I go speak and to a group, and I say, before you leave here, you need to know our mission statement, because it's our community's mission statement. Really, it's our department, but it's our community, and it's powerful. It's only 5 words, and I would challenge people who are listening or watching on this to look at your own department mission statement. And my suspicion is most of you viewers out there can't recite it, because it's generally a paragraph and it's a bunch of words. But ours is 5 words, and it's powerful. And the first 2 words are save lives. You all do that by giving instructions for chest compressions during CPR over the telephone, or helping somebody deliver a baby. Talk about something scary. I mean, I can handle a lot of scary stuff, but delivering a baby would be like the most scary thing I could ever imagine.
100%.
It would be so
right there with you.
But you all do it over the phone and help people through that, and all of a sudden baby's alive and breathing, and then you're like, okay, good luck, paramedics are there, and then you're on to another call, which is again quite amazing what you do. So saving lives is what we all do, and what's our charge. The community expects us to do that, and that's all lives. That's people we don't even know. That's a powerful thing. You get a call, you dispatch a police officer, a medic, a firefighter, and they go out there and they save somebody's life. We do it again. We don't even know that person. We might not even like that person. Right? We may know that person and not like that person, and then save that person's life. It's powerful what public safety does. That's the first thing. Fight crime is the second part of it. And it's not, oh, let's go out there and try and stop some crime and maybe reduce it a little bit. No, it's fight, because I think our community wants us to stop crime in the community so they can feel safe. So a mom with a stroller can walk down the bike path and feel comfortable, or a husband and wife can go shopping and not worrying about somebody stealing their car or breaking into it or shoplifting from crime fighting, so forth. And then survive is a powerful word. And that word's designed that way in our mission statement for each person to internalize that and use it how they feel they want to. Dispatcher. If I said survive for you and you go to work, there's something in your mind on how that's going to affect you that day. Are you going to survive that call? Are you going to be able to get home? Are you going to have good mental capacity when you get home? You're going to feel good? Survive might be important. Or as you're talking to that victim on the phone, or that spouse who medics are doing CPR on, you help them survive through that, right? Survive is very powerful. Detective dealing with the victim of domestic violence or assault, help that victim survive. So that's really what our charge is. And then our goals of the department are right in line as well, which is reduce crime and fear of crime. We're charged with that. And even when we say fear of crime, there may not be crime, but if somebody is fearful that there is crime, we have to work towards that to help bring that down. Then traffic safety is the second goal that we have, and they're in no particular order because they all move around throughout on a daily basis in Loveland, every city. And all of us are around traffic. A couple thousand car wrecks a year in Loveland, that affects a lot of people, and so that's a very important goal, is to reduce incidents of car crashes and keep people driving safe. And then the last part is what we're doing right now is community education. And if an officer or a dispatcher every day could do all 3 of those goals, or at least one of those goals, or maybe 2, we've had a good successful day in our community. So that's what we're trying to do every day, and that's what drives me when I come to work, is I'm thinking, what can I do to achieve those goals for the day? So haven't done anything traffic safety wise today, or maybe a little bit of crime fighting in years, people are listening, but certainly community education, so, I feel that I've accomplished at least one goal today. I feel good about that. 4th of July coming up this weekend, I'll be out and about, so, if I see a traffic offender in front of me and I stop them and give them a warning or write them a ticket or whatever the case is, then I've accomplished one of those goals too. And if there's some crimes involved and I'm part of that, to help out an officer or handle it myself and take care of that too. So it's short and sweet what we do here, but it's not long and drawn out. We know what we're supposed to do.
Anything else you want the community to know about Loveland Police Department?
About the Loveland Police Department. This department is a nationally accredited department since 1992. And what does that mean? That means only 5% of American law enforcement agencies are nationally accredited. That means we have outside agencies, outside auditors looking in at our department to make sure we're working to national standards, and so does our dispatch center having a national accreditation. So both of us, right, together are nationally accredited. What does that mean? We're held to a higher standard than agencies that aren't accredited. For example, on the police department side, we have to adhere to 450 standards. That's national standards to do our business. And this department for over 30 years has been accredited that long. What we're seeing in the nation with stresses in American law enforcement right now on police reform, you're hearing a lot about that, and demands for change in law enforcement. Most of what is being asked by the public in the United States right now in law enforcement, we're already doing it because we're so solid on our policies and practices and procedures because we've been doing it. So are there some adjustments we need to make a little bit now? It's police reform, some new bills being passed, yeah. And we should always be looking at ways to improve or do things differently if it's good for the community. So that's really important. Now, what is the makeup of our department? Before I get to that, I'll talk about what our department has to offer. And I tell the community, let's say today, that we have everything in our organization that a large city like Phoenix or Denver or Los Angeles has. We have SWAT, we have canines, we have motorcycles, we have narcotics officers, we have street crimes, we have bicycle units, we have downtown patrol, we have dispatch, records, evidence. We got it all, right? And I'm missing a few in the future too. We have it all. Some of it's not full-time, it's collateral duties. That's pretty cool because then the department has opportunity to well-round their officers. Kind of like that activity. So patrol officers do a variety of different assignments. So there's a lot of opportunities here. Who we are, that's going back to why I still stay in the profession, because when I walk out of this room with you, and I walk into that room over there or in the parking lot, I can look around and know that everybody that I'm working with comes from not a perfect background. They're not perfect, but they have great character, great integrity, and they've been vetted and brought into this organization and trained in the competencies. So that's a little bit about what we all walks of life too, right? Men, women, different races, different ethnicities, different religions, different backgrounds, and I look around and just see people. I don't see white, black, Hispanic, Asian, male, female, young, old. I don't see any of that. I just see great people here. That's really cool. And I think the community sees that too, because when they call 911, they don't get to pick their police officer. Right? It might be a 22-year-old cop, or it could be somebody that's 60. Might be a man, might be a woman. Might have a lot of experience. Might have a lot, little experience, but the thing is, they're all great people trying to do great work. So that's really cool. Yeah, it's a great department.
Yeah.
Best department. That's our goal, right?
It's our favorite department.
It's our favorite department. Our favorite department.
Erica, do you have anything?
I know we talked about reform, and is there a chance that the Loveland Police Department would be defunded or anything like that? Talk to City Council? Any
No.
worries about that? No?
Strict defunding, absolutely not. We have a city council here that is very supportive of this police department, city manager that's very supportive of this police department, community that's very supportive of this department, and a community and a city council and city manager that prioritizes public safety as the number one priority. And And so that means that is gonna be the number one focus of this community. Does that mean that our budgets could get tight at times? Yes, they could, and that's, for me, responsible for managing a very, very large budget. I mean, it's taxpayer money, and we're appreciative of that, and we hold that very dear to what we do is using that money wisely. Our budgets may get tight, especially after COVID, less revenue coming to the city. So we will work on that as a team for the city, but that doesn't mean defunding, that just means balancing the budgets as best we can. But I can tell you, in my 4 years that I've been here, we've brought on an additional 20, around, give or take, around 20 new police officer positions just in the last 4 years, and additional professional staff as well too, and salaries have been increased to keep with parity with other agencies. A lot of support. So that's what our community believes in this department. We're going to support financially so we can do our jobs, protect our community. But will budgets get a little tight at times? Yeah. But defunding, that's unfortunate that we're hearing that talk about the nation, because that really doesn't make sense. When you think about why governments were formed, and governments were formed for one reason, to protect the planet, for public safety. You go all the way back to Hue and Cry era. That means people around the campfire, 100 people in that clan. Somebody was selected to be the watch person, right? The watchman back in that day, to protect that clan. That was really the first part of government being formed, was to protect. And our community understands that still, how we govern here. So we're fortunate for that. Because it would be difficult to work in a community where you weren't supported and there was talk or thoughts of defunding the police. That would be on the way to anarchy. Right? We don't want that.
No, thank you.
That was my own personal opinion on that.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, we need that.
Yeah.
We appreciate it. Thank you for that perspective.
Hey, I don't have anything. If you have anything else you want to add before we.
Thank you for what you're doing here. I think since I'm on, I want to give you both something.
Wait, oh, goodness.
So everybody can see this.
You're like, I gotta get this on the video.
I was gonna give it to you later, but since we have
Oh,
more
my
time. So this is the Chiefs Challenge coin. It has the Chiefs badge on it on one side, and then the other side it has our value statement: rise to excellence, respect, integrity, service, and excellence. Just a small token of my appreciation to say thank you for what you're doing to meet the goal of community education.
Thank you.
For taking care of us.
Oh, this is so kind. Thank you so much.
Yes, very neat.
It's got the mission statement on there too, those 5 words.
Mission statement,
Mission statement.
not slogan.
Not slogan. The slogan is protect and serve, right? We can call that, but that's the mission statement. So,
Learning, I'm learning
you
too.
got it.
Thank you for that, it's very sweet.
Thank you.
Well, I think that's it, guys. I feel weird like looking at it
Right.
like a camera instead of a person.
Yeah.
But we'll see you guys next time. I don't know what's gonna be next. Who knows what's gonna be next?
Somebody's surprised.
Yeah. But until then, know where you are, know your phone number, and tell us exactly what happened. And we're gonna turn this off now.
Sweet.
Intense.
Nice.